Okay. So, good evening, ladies. Good afternoon or good evening, Professor Jesus. Welcome to our study session group number 2. And for today's discussion, we have the participants from this team who are Patty, Janita, and Lulu. For this session, I will be the leader in the discussion, and we will pay critical attention to the following articles. The article number 1 was called Voice Blogging and L2 Speaking Performance, and it was written by Sue in the year 2016. We have the second one, an analysis of students' engagement patterns in language learning facilitated by Web 2.0 technologies by Liu et al. And the number 3, collaborative task in wiki-based environments in EFL learning by Zhu and et al. And the 3 articles were written in the year 2016. So the central issue that I found, it was like the 3 readings were approaching and were concerned with the use of ICTs, either in Web 2.0 platforms, and they were related to productive skills, as in the case of speaking and writing. Before moving on, we're going to have like a general discussion that is going to have a length of 5 minutes. And let's start. So I just mentioned what I consider was the main axis from the 3 readings. What do you think, Patricia, was the main issue here? Tell us.
Yes, for me, the central theme is how technology can function as a complement for EFL settings. For example, speaking. What about speaking? Perhaps in EFL settings, we are not, let's say we don't have the opportunity we wish to be able to practice our speaking abilities within the language. So technology can come into our language classroom to try to solve or to some extent complement this issue. The thing here is that technology can be incorporated, even thought that if it's going to be something that is not going to happen in the classroom per se, it's going to be part of it. So it requires the involvement of teachers and students as a whole. And in this case, the 3 articles point out how the strengths and the deficiencies of technology and how they can be encountered by students and teachers. So for me, that will be the central theme, Sebas.
Okay, very good. Let's go ahead with the discussion. Diana, do you agree with what Patty said? What are your main thoughts concerned with this?
Well, I think that I agree with Patty's comments regarding that the central theme in these articles are the implementation of application of Web 2.0. And I would like also add that it is important the collaborative part, because as Patty mentioned, sometimes we don't have the time in the classroom to practice any kind of skill. Could it be speaking or writing or listening? So I think that is suitable, these applications, because you can practice outside the classroom, and students have like this freedom to collaborate with other partners, let's say, because they complement each other, and I think that this will increase their language learning process in a second language.
Very good. Lulu, how can you... Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Okay. Well, I would like to take your comment as a basis, Sebas, about the productive skills. And I'm also going to take Diana's comment about freedom. Why? Because I think that, to me, the 3 articles try to fight stereotypes, in the sense that most of the times we see platforms or apps as only means to practice receptive skills. So in this sense, I think that yes, they are working with productive skills. I think that's one of the best contributions of the 3 articles, that they all they are all trying to fight stereotypes. And also about Diana's comment about freedom, I think they are semi-controlled activities. And this means that for me, this is an advantage. And the three articles that they are guiding in that sense, that they are not restricted to like, for example, students are not left by themselves. So in this sense, I would only like to contribute in that part, that these articles are definitely trying to fight stereotypes about using technology for education.
Pretty good. I think like what we mentioned here is very important because we're discussing three articles and three situations that are currently, in nowadays life, part of second language acquisition, English teaching, and technology. So following this line, we're going to move to the theoretical and empirical foundations. As you may remember, the three articles mention topics such as blogs, wikis, and collaborative tasks. So what do you think, or what do you consider were the theoretical and empirical foundation most relevant? But remember, look in the forest and not the trees. Would you like to start, please, Yanita?
Okay, yes. Well, I consider that the three articles mention how important is to to include technology in the classroom. In this case, as you mentioned, the wikis, the blogs, and I think that both of them, or in the studies that they mentioned, present positive attitudes regarding the students. The students think that this kind of activities increase their skills in any time of skills, and also they like to have contact with non-native speakers because they develop this how do you say, this experience. In one of the articles mentioned that some of the students did not have the experience to travel abroad. So I think that for them, it will be that they will be motivated with activities that they are engaged with their own learning process. So I think that the empirical foundation of this is that the implementation of the Web 2.0 is something that needs to be in our classroom nowadays.
Thank you very much. Let's move on to the other classmates' opinion. What do you think, Lulu?
Yes, well, to me, like the empirical foundation of the three articles in general is very, very strong. Why? Because they show both the strengths and the weaknesses of the studies, but they focus more on the weaknesses, and they try to address that in their research. And I don't know, maybe in the theoretical foundation, I would say that only Liu's article actually follows a theory, which is flow theory, I think, and social constructivism. So in that case, in that sense, well, this article is very stronger than the other two.
Pretty good. And let's close this topic, please, Patty. What can you support?
Yes, I definitely agree with Lulu. While I was reading the articles, it was quite amazing how each of the empirical studies they provided, they had these both sides. They were like, yes, these were the advantages, these were the aspects that were good. However, I love how they include the word however, nevertheless, because it's good to have the pictures. Like, not everything is going to be good in research. They were lacking this. And mostly that they tried to address these limitations they found in other studies and try to address them in theirs. So it was a way of saying, okay, this was what literature has shown and how it has been done. I'm going to learn from it. And that for me gives them a great and very strong empirical foundation, which contrary to the theoretical, I think there was some lack because their concepts were like in the air, but no strong relationship between them, and mainly in terms of foreign language learning was not very established. So maybe they focus more on the empirical rather than the theoretical. And it will be amazing to have both sides as well.
Perfect. Okay, we're doing pretty well with these opinions. Now let's discuss about something very interesting, which was the methodology. Now for this one, would you like to take the words, please, Patty?
Yes. Well, first of all, there were two things I noticed. Like the three were written or published in the same year, and two of them were in the same place, Taiwan. So I think that was quite like it was unusual. So for me, this tells me something like they are perhaps it was not that back in the time that we are trying to incorporate technology, but also that there are places that are ahead of us. Because I'm thinking like, yes, Taiwan, yes, Chinese students with UK, but what about Mexico? Like, I would really like to know how these methodologies could be implemented in this context. And also, one very interesting thing was that I think the instruments were very suitable for both the participants and the context. I really liked how in one of the articles for digital stories, it really adapted to kids. So they were aware who the participants were and the context. So for me, they were quite successful in that element.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's move on. What do you think about this, Dianita? But remember, we have like a limit about a minute and a half. Your mic is off.
Thank you, Sebas. Well, I think that I liked that the three articles implement different types of instruments. Both of them implement 4 different instruments in order to triangulate information. So I consider that this makes that the studies have readability, but also I think that it is necessary that the methodology need to be piloting, because just one of the articles implement this pilot. And to find out with my argument, I think that the students need to be trained in order to use the instrument, because sometimes one of the comments of the students was that they were not familiar with this type of application.
Thank you very much. Let's close this part, Lulu.
Yes, I agree with Anita in the sense that I really liked that they used a variety of data collection techniques, because I think that gives technology or research in ICTs like a better support, because like there's a lot of still skepticism about it. So I really like that. But well, I think that also what I saw in the three of them, although it is not like like written, but I think they are kind of mixed methods. I also like that. So they complement each other, I like the part that they consider students' opinions. And finally, I really liked about Liu's article that they use pre, while, and post questionnaires. Like it is very, very, very covered, and I think that would be a good advice for further research in other areas of language education research.
Okay, pretty good. Let's move forward to the spicy things. Let's discuss the shortcomings and strength. What do you think about this, Lulu? But for this part, Ross, remember we have 3 minutes, so let's try to be brief and concise, please.
Yes, thank you, Sebas. Well, one of the shortcomings that I consider more like important was that it is very, we have to be careful about how are we conducting the study, in the sense that in the first article about Su, I think that he failed to tell like how did he elicit a speaking practice, because I think there were not prompts, and if there were prompts, well, they were not really showed. So I would be very careful in going to detail or in describing, for example, how I collected data and what was the instruments about.
Okay, thank you very much. What do you think about this, Dianita?
Well, one of the shortcomings that I I found in the articles was that in both of the three articles, they were like this guide in order that the students could use the applications. However, in one of the articles, the students have like this freedom. So probably in this case, they were not, they do not follow a rubric. So they didn't know how to use this application. Thus, as consequence, their results to improve their speaking skill will not be suitable because they are not trained to use this application.
Oh, thank you very much. Nice point. And now, Patis?
Yes, I would like to add to Lulu's comment mentioned previously. Even though they were they were called more into the quantitative spectrum, I consider definitely that they incorporate both, but they continue to lack the qualitative aspect. So by staying so perhaps strictly to quantitative, and even when they acknowledged that there was something missing, they didn't address it. And as I mentioned before, if they were really aware of the limitations of previous studies, they should also be aware of their own. And even when they state them, I was wondering, like, well, you are aware of them, so why don't you address them now in your own article and provide the audience both sides? Because I think it's easy to just say, oh, this is the limitation of the study. Yeah, but don't you just mention it? Why don't you address it and give me this other side that you say your article is missing? So that would be for me perhaps the shortcomings. It's not just a matter of identifying or stating it, but perhaps addressing it at the moment.
Pretty good, Patty. Pretty good. Well done, girls. Now, let's move on to the data and findings. So, would you like to start, please, Janita? What are your thoughts concerning this topic?
Well, in the three articles, the students mentioned that have to have positive attitudes by using this kind of applications. But I think that in the three articles where it was mentioned the key elements that was engagement, motivation, but I would like to see more how is the purpose. For example, I consider that in my case, I don't know how to use it, and I think that for the real, it will be beneficial to know how implement these type of applications, which is the purpose, and probably which are the potential benefits in their learning process.
Oh, pretty good. Would you like to continue the same line, Patty?
Yes, in this sense, throughout the three articles, I noticed that the authors really pointed out that technology cannot stand by itself. Not just because it works at the beginning does not really imply it's going to work at the middle and at the end. So it's not just a matter of sending your students to an application or a blog. It's not just telling them, yes, go and write and then we'll provide feedback. No, it's a matter of getting involved. And we should not see technology as an escape or just as an extra. No, because it requires the same amount of involvement from the teachers and the students as if they were in the classroom. So for me, this implementation should be a guided and well-documented implementation, not just because it works somewhere else, but why? Why are you using it? And how are you going to teach your students to use it? What's going to be the outcome? Are they aware of those outcomes? So for me, it's like, yes, technology is there, but you have to be precise of its use. And also be aware that it's not going to solve everything. It's just one of the tools, and you need how to use it appropriately for your students.
Yeah, practically technology is an additional part of us as teachers. So how would you conclude this part, Lulu?
I really like the Patty's comment. I think that yes, that definitely the fact that there exists technology, it will not replace us like as a teachers. So I do consider as well that teacher involvement is needed. And I really like the fact that these three studies were involved with emotions somehow.
Yes.
So, for example, they took into account how students were feeling. Some articles addressed it like more, like it was like an objective, but others somehow they also addressed it. And the fact also that I didn't see like negative emotions, that means something. Now I wonder I wonder how it may work, this collaborative work with those students who find in technology a place to be by themselves, in the sense that maybe they are shy and they are afraid of interacting with others.
Yeah, that's a really nice question, taking into account the students' perceptions, attitude, and their personality as well.
Right.
But I think that's a part that we're going to touch almost to the end. So we're almost reaching the end of this discussion. But before moving on, let's talk about relevance and validity of the studies concerned with ICTs and the acquisition of L2 and education, obviously. So any volunteer?
Me.
Okay, Pat, let's go.
In one of the articles, I highlighted because it was quite interesting that they mentioned that because it was an exploratory design, due to its exploratory nature, no pedagogical implications could really be transferred into like the classroom. But I don't I don't agree that much with that statement, because the fact that you are just taking the risk of incorporating, that means something. And I have learned through this, because even I consider myself like a person who can use technology. I had no idea of this. Like, I had never thought how a blog can increase the speaking skills of my students, or their interaction, or even gaining cultural aspects. So despite that they were exploratory, they were really eye-opening to see that, yes, there are other areas to go and provide our students that perhaps go beyond our knowledge and our language classroom. And also something just to close, it was really interesting how the quantitative results showed that there was no great improvement, but when it comes to qualitative and perceptions, it was the opposite, because even thought that the pre-test and post-test showed perhaps no much increase in the performance, their perceptions about their performance did increase. So what does this tell us? Should we go for the quantitative and say, no, it doesn't work, or stick to the perceptions that allows us to see their language learning process from the student and how they perceive their performance?
Okay, very, very critical eye in that aspect. What do you think about this, Dianita?
Well, I like to comment, Patty, because I think that the three articles mention to implement a variety of instruments. So by using these different instruments, I think that they are able to triangulate information, as Patty mentioned, that where is qualitative and quantitative. So using these methods, I consider that made the studies are that they have validity, and also I consider that that the I just forgot what I was to say. Well, continue, Lulu, please.
Yes. Well, in my case, I found 4 points that are, to me, are really related to pedagogy. The first one is that the author knows that there's something missing in education, in language education, which is the use outside the classroom. And the three of them address somehow that point. The second one is the dynamic engagement, but it is also like it is more realistic to think about motivation as a not a stable process. So we need to take that into account as teachers. That probably the students who were very motivated at the beginning, they will not be motivated in the middle. So what actions are we going to take as teachers? The third one is the native and non-native speakers dilemma, because we know that there has been like this a polarized opinion about it, but I think they actually show how it can be balanced. And the fourth one is like error correction, and they show us how to, instead of focusing directly in form, how we can address that through technology and focusing on meaning.
Very good points and very solid basis, girls. Denita, would you like to retake the part you were mentioning, or should I close the session for today?
Please continue. I have in my
The tip of your tongue.
lips, but
Okay, so now we're reaching to the time limit, and I'm going to close this study session number 2. Thank you for your participation, girls. It was very interesting to check, listen, and discuss these 3 readings. So to conclude, I can say like it becomes evident the crucial role that technology has been acquired through the years. These studies has been conducted 4 years ago, but now in 2020, and with the pandemic things, we can appreciate it and give it more value to our teaching practices and to the use of ICTs and language acquisition. And I will say like the most important part regarding all the aspects you mentioned, like emotions, perceptions about native, non-native, support of the use of technology out of the classroom, validity, give a value to the numbers and to the students' perceptions. I think as English teachers, we must remember what is the central use or what is the communicative aspect we're using technology. I think we just not to throw our students like use Duolingo, use a platform. Me as an English teacher, gamer and geek, I used to use some apps like, okay, this is funny, but use it. But now that I'm reading this and understanding the context, what was the main purpose? What is the purpose to have a chat with a person from another country while you're gaming? So based on the 3 readings and quoting Su, Liu, and Zhu et al., we can argue that technology and second language acquisition are almost like brothers, and they share a very common aspect, and in further years and with a proper use, we can reach great things. And thank you very much for your participation, girls, and see you in the next time. Okay, bye.
Bye.